A woman was falsely accused of being a witch, bound to a stake, and burned alive. While ignorant humans remain unaware of the impending doom their actions will bring, the scorching flames consume her for 10 days, until her body turns to charred remains. Terrifying events unfold as a swirling flame in the shape of a skull appears. In his fury, he proclaims that all present today will suffer a painful death 1 year from now. Little did they know, the woman burned alive was Lisa, the wife of the vampire king Dracula. In this feudal era, where religion held sway, Lisa, a scholar, stood out as an anomaly, driven by her thirst for advanced scientific knowledge. Lisa traverses a bone-laden border to reach a castle that only materializes at night. This place, known as the Land of Death, is the dwelling of the vampire king Dracula, and it houses a civilization of scientific marvels beyond human comprehension. As Lisa stepped through the castle gates, its master, Dracula, had already appeared behind her. Though Lisa is filled with fear, she overcomes it in pursuit of higher knowledge. Lisa implores Dracula to share his knowledge with her. During their conversations, Dracula is astonished to discover that this woman does not adhere to any religious beliefs. In response, he shows Lisa his laboratory, filled with various experimental apparatuses. Lisa was elated, for she knew that these advanced technologies would greatly enhance human lives. Dracula, too, was drawn to this kind and innocent woman before him. As they spent days and nights together, they unexpectedly became husband and wife. More than 20 years elapse, and Lisa becomes a skilled doctor. However, the feudal ecclesiastical authority deemed her corrupted by the evil Dracula. Branding her a witch, they sentenced her to death by burning at the stake, accusing her of heresy. Kind-hearted Lisa, until her final moments, pleaded for humanity, hoping that Dracula would not harm them. Meanwhile, Dracula, just returning from his world tour, is on his way back home, when suddenly a flock of crows flies overhead. He suddenly feels an ominous premonition. He hastens his pace to return home, but it's too late. All he sees is a scene of devastation. A woman approaches with flowers in hand. She was once helped by Lisa, and she proceeds to inform Dracula of the events. 2 lines of blood and tears streak down Dracula's face. In the next moment, flames ignited upon Dracula's body, transforming into a towering blaze that shot into the sky. At this moment, ignorant people are still celebrating the burning of Lisa. Suddenly, a massive flame engulfs the entire scene, and the exploding flames take on the form of Dracula. He angrily questions the people why they killed his wife, but the bishop dismisses it as a delusion and attempts to exorcise him with a cross. Dracula delivered a death sentence upon the people, granting humanity 1 year to flee the continent. After 1 year, Dracula will open the gates of hell and destroy all life here. He wants this group of humans to experience the pain of losing everything. Yet, despite this, people foolishly choose to believe in the church, disregarding Dracula's warning altogether. They even hold a celebration on the anniversary of Lisa's burning, with the archbishop being carried onto the podium to give a speech. Now that the 1-year deadline has passed, terrifying events have not yet unfolded. However, at that moment, a drop of blood fell onto the archbishop's palm. Instantly, dark clouds gather, and blood rain pours down incessantly. Accompanying it, countless demon embryos descend. Witnessing this horrific scene, the humans were terrified beyond measure. The archbishop is impaled by shards of glass through his chest, followed by a massive explosion from the church. As the soaring flames once again converge into the form of Dracula, Dracula granted humanity 1 year's reprieve, hoping they would repent for their sins. Yet, they celebrated on Lisa's death anniversary. Dracula proclaims that today is their day of death. The flames engulf the entire city in an instant. Simultaneously, a terrifying demon city emerges slowly from the flames. The windows of the demon city open abruptly, and hordes of demons fly out from within, embarking on a massacre of these foolish humans. Countless bats once again form the likeness of Dracula. He commands his army of demons to launch an attack on all the countries of Wallachia. He wanted every human being on this land to pay the price with their lives. From then on, every night, demons would unleash carnage upon this land, only to depart when day breaks. The corpses of humans who die each day pile up like mountains. Yet, in this land of death, it attracts a mysterious man. The man's name was Ralph, the last member of the Belmondo clan, dedicated to hunting demons. Upon arriving in the town, Ralph witnesses a priest beating an old man. The old man is Giovanni, the patriarch of the Belnades clan, skilled in magic and prophecy. The Belnades clan are the true envoys of justice, the newly appointed archbishop, in order to evade responsibility, falsely accuses them of summoning Dracula to slaughter humanity, and orders their expulsion before sunset, or they would be exterminated. Seeing this, Ralph decisively knocked the weapon out of the priest's hand. Another priest pulled out a dagger and tried to kill him. Ralph sighed. As a priest, to carry such a murderous weapon on his person. However, after just one round, Ralph drives them away. Afterward, Ralph follows Giovanni to their stronghold. Giovanni reveals to Ralph the reason they are staying here. It turns out that within the Belnades clan, there has always been a prophecy of a chosen hero, slumbering in the underground castle of Grezit. When darkness engulfs this land, it will be the moment of his awakening. Giovanni's granddaughter, Sypha, has been searching for that hero, but her whereabouts remain unknown. Upon hearing this, Ralph expresses his willingness to lend a hand. Following the clues, Ralph arrives at an abandoned cemetery. Although he is cautious enough, he falls into a trap. Yet, with his agility, he emerges unscathed. Here, he finds Sypha, who has already turned into a stone statue, alongside a massive demon that appeared as well. A one-eyed giant with petrifying abilities. Anyone struck by the beams from its eye would turn into a statue. However, as a demon hunter, Ralph didn't give it a second thought. After the battle, with the death of the one-eyed giant, Sypha finally returns to her original form. Ralph lived up to expectations and successfully rescued Sypha. However, just as everyone was celebrating, Dracula's demonic army unexpectedly launched another attack. Bloodthirsty and cruel demons descending from the sky. This horrifying scene caused a massive panic among the unprepared crowd. On the other side, the priest who had falsely accused Lisa had now become the new archbishop, finally attaining the coveted power he had desired. Suddenly, a dark, gray aura filled the entire space. In the dimly lit church, uninvited guests had somehow infiltrated. Dracula had possessed a terrifying demon, and today he intended to pass judgment on the mastermind behind his wife's murder. Meanwhile, Ralph led a group of demon hunters who valiantly resisted. They coated their weapons with salt, a crucial tool against demons, while the priest prepared large quantities of holy water. However, before everyone could fully prepare, bloodthirsty and terrifying demons emerged from the flames. Sypha, as a wizard from the Belnades clan, immediately began chanting spells, conjuring two massive ice walls that trapped the demons within. The demon hunters launched their attacks, while Sypha continued to unleash her magic, quickly annihilating the demons in the area. At this moment, the demon once possessed by Dracula lunged directly at Ralph and Sypha, catching them off guard. In a critical moment, Sypha summoned ice spikes from the ground, sealing the demon. Ralph seized the opportunity, wielding his sacred whip to strike, and the previously fearsome demon exploded upon impact. However, the enormous explosion caused the ground to collapse, and the two found themselves falling into an underground chamber. But what no one could have anticipated was that beneath the city lay a massive and majestic underground palace. Ralph accidentally triggered a mechanism, and the lid of a coffin opened with a sound. A remarkably handsome and mysterious man floated out of the coffin, bearing a massive scar on his perfect body. With Sypha's extraordinary perception, she immediately recognized him as the chosen hero from the prophecy. She quickly explained the current situation to the man, slowly lifting his head. Beneath his exceptionally handsome appearance, the man revealed a pair of sharp fangs. Ralph immediately sensed something was amiss, realizing that the man before him was a vampire. As a member of the Belmondo clan, destroying vampires was his innate duty. So, Ralph immediately drew his weapon and entered combat mode. While the man summoned a long sword, the two engaged in a fierce battle. And for a moment, victory was uncertain. But the man's speed was incredibly fast, and Ralph gradually found himself at a disadvantage. Seizing the opportunity, the man launched a follow-up attack, shattering Ralph's sword with a single blow. But Ralph also inflicted a deep wound on the man's chest. Enraged, the man dropped his long sword, prepared to tear Ralph's throat apart with his fangs. Just as the two were locked in a stalemate, Sypha intervened to stop them. The man discovered that Sypha was a wizard from the Belnades clan and spared Ralph. It turned out he was Alucard, the son of Dracula, the vampire king. A year ago, Alucard suffered severe injuries while trying to stop his father and was sealed away. Nowadays, fate has brought together the three individuals mentioned in the prophecy. And next, they will do everything in their power to prevent Dracula from destroying the world. However, what they don't know is that Dracula has already gathered the vampire lords from the entire continent. Each one bloodthirsty and cruel. Incredibly powerful, the true day of destruction has officially begun. Meanwhile, Isaac lashes himself with a whip every day, not stopping until his skin is torn open, for only through this does he remain constantly reminded of the suffering he has endured. Isaac was originally a slave, bought by a holy knight, but little did he know that the holy knight was a sadist, tormenting him relentlessly despite Isaac's ceaseless work. One day, Isaac finally couldn't bear it, and the endless anger and pain caused him to explode. So, he exerted all his strength to kill the holy knight. From that moment on, he hated all humans, drawing a clear line between himself and them, until Dracula found him again. Dracula hoped to harness Isaac's power to help him eradicate humanity, because Dracula had once saved Isaac and bestowed upon him enough trust and respect. Without hesitation, Isaac immediately agreed to Dracula's request and swore loyalty to Dracula until the end of his life. Isaac and another man named Hector, both devil forge masters, possessed the rare ability to resurrect and forge deceased lives into demons. In this way, Dracula could have an endless supply of demonic soldiers. Though they were human, Isaac and Hector were Dracula's most trusted confidants. Meanwhile, the vampire lord Edwin opposed Dracula's actions. He believed that if all humans were eradicated, they would lose the pleasure of consuming fresh blood and be forced to feed on pig's blood instead. But Dracula, consumed by the flames of revenge, couldn't tolerate anyone's questioning. Faced with the overwhelming power of the vampire king, Edwin dared not resist. Meanwhile, Ralph, accompanied by Alucard and Sypha, was on their way to the ancestral home of the Belmondo clan, because Dracula was too powerful, and with their current strength, the three of them were no match for him. Inside the ancestral home of the Belmondo clan, there was a treasure vault. Inside the treasury lay countless formulas and methods for hunting demons that the Belmondo clan ancestors had collected over centuries, along with legendary powerful spellbooks. Sypha used her magic to open the doors of the vault, revealing numerous potion formulas and demon hunting techniques, along with the legendary and immensely powerful magic book, perhaps guided by ancestral forces. Ralph found the legendary artifact of the Belmondo clan, the Whip of God. This whip, known as the Morning Star. At this time, Edwin and the other vampire lords launched an attack on a small town, intent on draining the blood of its inhabitants before humanity went extinct. The humans were utterly defenseless, left at the mercy of the merciless vampires' massacre. Upon returning to the castle, Edwin encountered Countess Carmilla, an ancient vampire who had survived for centuries. She possesses great ambition, seeking to re-establish the order of the world and escape the control of Dracula. Her words resonated with Edwin, and they quickly formed an alliance to betray Dracula. However, their forces were far inferior to Dracula's, and the only solution at the moment was to turn two devil forge masters, who were still human, to their side. By doing so, they could have an endless army of demons. With their plan in place, Edwin sought out Isaac, explaining their scheme to him, but he underestimated Isaac's loyalty to Dracula. Isaac swiftly grabbed Edwin from behind, using his whip to choke him. Finally, he mercilessly plunged his weapon into Edwin's heart, ending his life. On the other hand, Carmilla's attempt to turn Hector went very well, only because Hector had a bottom line in his heart. He wanted to spare some innocent humans. In the treasury of the Belmont clan, the three of them discovered a legendary teleportation mirror that could transport them anywhere in the world. Now, with everything in place, the counterattack could officially begin. At this moment, Carmilla was plotting a rebellion against Dracula. She had turned an entire river into holy water and planned to destroy the bridge when Dracula's army crossed it. In an instant, Dracula's demonic army was annihilated. Dracula was forced to move his castle, but it was too late. The holy water-filled river swallowed his entire demonic army. Dracula seemed to sense the impending danger and swiftly teleported his most loyal subordinate, Isaac, to a safe location. At that moment, Alucard and the others used the opportunity to teleport into the castle. The three of them fought side by side, their powers greatly enhanced. In a matter of moments, they slaughtered the vampire lords within the castle. Finally, in the study of the castle, Alucard found his father, Dracula. Alucard pleaded with his father to stop in the name of his mother. However, Dracula had already descended into madness. A battle between father and son became inevitable. Alucard wielded his silver sword, harnessing terrifying power, and launched a fierce assault. He struck back, knocking Alucard to the ground. Witnessing this, Ralph rushed to help but was also struck by Dracula, coughing up blood. Seizing the opportunity, Alucard stabbed Dracula's arm with his sword, and Sypha unleashed a flaming spell towards Alucard's head. The three of them worked in perfect harmony, inflicting wounds upon Dracula. Enraged, Dracula summoned a massive meteorite out of thin air. With no place to hide, the three were forced to confront it head-on. Alucard used all his strength to deflect the meteor back, creating a massive explosion that tore a hole in the wall. Alucard floated in mid-air, coldly staring at Dracula, as if proclaiming his victory. Dracula, realizing he had no choice, unleashed his full power, and the two engaged in close-quarters combat. Despite being initially overwhelmed, Alucard used his innate speed to launch a counterattack. However, he was quickly caught by Dracula by the neck, who then slammed him forcefully into the ground. Dracula's powerful punches struck Alucard's body like cannonballs. Just as Alucard was sent flying into another room, Dracula suddenly stopped. It was Alucard's old room. Seeing everything familiar within the room and gazing upon his wife's portrait, Dracula regained his sanity. He stood frozen in place, like a child who had done something wrong. Alucard struggled to rise, picking up a wooden stake and walking directly towards his father. In the next moment, Alucard forcefully plunged the stake into Dracula's heart. Dracula shed tears of blood, not in pain, but filled with boundless guilt. In his final moments, he wanted to embrace his son, but Ralph, who arrived last, beheaded Dracula with a single sword strike. The once invincible Dark Lord Dracula met his demise. It was all over. When a person reaches the pinnacle of loneliness, the effects can be devastating. Alucard, consumed by endless emptiness and solitude after killing his own father, found solace in two dolls that he considered his friends. He poured out his innermost thoughts to them within the confines of the desolate castle. The vast fortress now stood empty, with Alucard as its sole inhabitant. On one fateful day, as Alucard was patrolling the castle's entrance, a black horse carrying a lifeless body approached him. Curious, he cautiously approached and discovered a desperate plea for help clutched in the corpse's hand. It detailed an attack by dark creatures upon a village located 30 kilometers away. The village had fallen victim to these dark creatures, and its inhabitants were defenseless. A desperate group had been dispatched to seek aid from the vampire, Alucard. Meanwhile, a few crimson-armored demons were relentlessly attacking the village's wooden barricades. It was at that precise moment that Alucard arrived, brandishing his silver sword. Alucard leaped into action. The dark creatures proved no match for him as he swiftly dispatched them one by one. Through the village elder, Alucard learned that after Dracula's demise, the remaining dark creatures had lost their restraint and were relentlessly attacking any life they encountered. The village had managed to withstand the onslaught under the guidance of the village elder and the mage Germain. Alucard deeply understood that it was his own actions that had caused this chaos. Determined to make amends, he would lead the villagers to seek refuge in his castle. Time was of the essence, and the villagers embarked on their journey through the night. Soon, they arrived at a dark and eerie forest. Alucard sensed a sinister and malevolent aura and leaped onto a towering tree, utilizing his heightened senses to locate the source. His suspicions were confirmed as a terrifying demon lay in ambush. Alucard transformed into a crimson blur, swiftly slaying the demon with a single strike. However, there were more demons lying in wait. Once again, Alucard positioned himself in front of the villagers, and a fierce battle ensued between him and the demons. In the midst of the fight, one of the demons spewed a green, corrosive liquid. Alucard raised his shield to protect himself, but the splattering fluid caused excruciating pain among the villagers. Witnessing their suffering, Alucard's determination intensified. The demons would face the wrath of the new vampire king. After overcoming numerous obstacles, Alucard finally managed to safely escort the villagers back to the castle, unbeknownst to him. However, he had fallen into a carefully prepared trap. Meanwhile, Ralph and Sypha, who were now married, were hunting various dark creatures around the world. At this point, the two of them had become even more powerful. Ralph's sword blade was unstoppable, and Sypha's magic was catastrophic. As they hunted down an increasing number of dark creatures, they discovered something peculiar. Across the world, a certain ritual involving living sacrifices was taking place. It seemed like they were trying to resurrect something, and these events were becoming more frequent, even more bizarre. They claimed to be followers of death. A larger conspiracy was about to unfold. Since Alucard had brought the refugees to the castle for shelter, everyone had been living peaceful lives, unaware that it was merely the calm before the storm. Within the castle, Germain was acting suspiciously, leaving mysterious symbols in hidden corners. Then, he entered the room where Alucard had slain Dracula, holding a key emanating a mysterious aura, which floated in the air. In the next moment, a magic not of this world unfolded at his feet. Meanwhile, an army of vampires and dark creatures quietly arrived at the castle's gates. Without hesitation, they launched a full-on assault on the castle. The desperate villagers picked up their weapons and engaged the dark creatures in direct combat. However, no one noticed that with each life lost, their souls were being directly absorbed by a certain energy. At that moment, Alucard took the front lines, his elegant figure dancing in the night sky, displaying unparalleled grace. In the next moment, Alucard raised his sword, and a strange blue flame engulfed the blade. With a single strike, he cut down a large group of enemies. Not a single dark creature could withstand Alucard's prowess. With his own strength, Alucard managed to hold the demon army in place. Seeing the dire situation, the dark creature sent forth a terrifying behemoth. Its blood-stained maw opened wide, spewing forth endless infernal flames. The entire battlefield turned into a sea of fire. The tide of battle had suddenly turned. Alucard had no choice but to lead the others back into the castle temporarily, preparing to defend against the onslaught. Just then, they discovered an eerie red light composed of souls. Alucard followed the trail of red light, leading him to Germain, who was casting a spell. When Germain saw Alucard approaching, he showed no surprise. He told Alucard that the reason behind his actions was to open the pathway to hell. His goal was to liberate the souls of Dracula and Lisa from the depths of hell. At that time, a perfect being, formed by the combination of the Vampire King and pure human souls, would come into existence. Germain, the creator of this extraordinary masterpiece, would become the god of the new world. Hearing this, Alucard erupted in anger and launched a direct attack. However, Germain had already set up a defensive barrier, rendering Alucard helpless for the moment. At the same time, the castle gates were breached by the dark creatures. To protect the remaining humans inside the castle, Alucard reluctantly returned to the hall to continue the fight. However, Alucard was becoming increasingly distracted, and with the overwhelming number of enemies, he found himself in a perilous situation. Just as the situation was reaching a critical point, Ralph and Sypha arrived just in time through a teleportation spell. At this moment, the three of them reunited once again, and the gears of their destiny began to turn. Their attacks poured down like a torrential storm, completely obliterating the once invincible demon army. Suddenly, a titan behemoth stormed onto the battlefield. In the next moment, blazing flames erupted from its mouth. Alucard transformed into a white giant wolf. He swiftly arrived above the behemoth. Ralph took advantage of the opportunity and swung his morning star, beheading the behemoth. On the other side, several vampires brought a hermaphrodite doll before Germain. This doll would serve as the vessel for Dracula and Lisa. Everything was proceeding smoothly according to Germain's plan. Just then, one of the vampires suddenly said to Germain, "Humans are so easily deceived." In the next moment, to Germain's astonishment, the vampire gradually revealed its true form. An incredibly dark and powerful aura instantly engulfed the entire space. It turned out that all of this was a scheme by Death. Due to Death's unique identity, he couldn't alter the rules of life and death. So, he manipulated Germain, urging him to resurrect Dracula. Once revived, Dracula would be under his control, and they would unleash an unprecedented massacre upon the world. Countless souls would become his nourishment. He would transcend all rules and become the ruler of the world. At this point, Germain was utterly powerless to resist. Forced to comply with Death's demands, completely opening the pathway to hell. At the same time, Alucard and the three of them were rapidly heading in the direction of Germain. Alucard would never allow anyone to disturb the peace of his parents, but the Grim Reaper wouldn't make it easy for them to reach their destination. He had already dispatched his minions to intercept them on the way. Without any hesitation, they launched a direct attack. At first, Alucard and his companions were taken by surprise, but fortunately, their coordinated efforts turned the tide. Next, only a mysterious vampire lord remained. However, this vampire was incredibly powerful. Sypha's flames had no effect on him. He single-handedly held his own against the three of them. Both sides fought fiercely, making it difficult to determine the outcome. In the chaos of the fight, Ralph severed the vampire lord's right arm with his whip. Enraged, the vampire grew wings and went into a complete rampage. Seeing this, the three of them launched their strongest attack, working together to slay the mighty vampire. After enduring countless hardships, the three of them finally arrived at their destination. However, a barrier blocked their way. At that moment, Ralph immediately recognized the Reaper standing before them. He urgently revealed the Reaper's true identity to Alucard. Meanwhile, Germain had successfully found the souls of Dracula and his wife. The ritual began. As he beheld the perfect masterpiece before them, the Grim Reaper was overcome with excitement. His lifelong wish was about to be fulfilled. Seizing the Reaper's distraction, Germain immediately used the remaining magical energy to separate the Reaper from the puppet. Just then, Ralph decisively took action. He leaped high into the air and threw his holy sword. Empowered by holy water, the sword directly pierced through the puppet's body. The already unstable immense energy turned into a massive explosion. The plan was destroyed, and Death was filled with anger. The terrifying explosion of energy split the castle in two, creating a shockwave that formed a gust of wind. This prevented Alucard and Sypha from reaching Ralph's side. Seeing this, Ralph remained remarkably calm and bid a final farewell to his beloved woman and turned to leave. Facing the overwhelmingly powerful Grim Reaper, Ralph had no hint of fear in his heart, even though he knew he couldn't defeat his opponent. But he had to fulfill his duty and destiny as a monster hunter. In the next moment, Ralph resolutely swung his Morning Star. However, the attack, imbued with divine power, had no effect on the Grim Reaper. The Reaper swung his scythe, and with tremendous force, cleaved the earth in two. Ralph could only dodge and wait for an opportunity to counterattack. Suddenly, the Reaper waved his arm, and the immense force sent Ralph flying. With just one strike, the Reaper shattered nearly half of Ralph's arm bones. But even with severe injuries, Ralph remained undeterred. He stood up once again. Death decided to put an end to this farce once and for all, officially declaring Ralph's death. Yet, in the next moment, Ralph, using his battered body, wielded his Morning Star once more. The radiant flames of the sun enveloped the whip. Ralph swung the Morning Star like a madman, the attacks raining down on the Grim Reaper like a storm. Even the mighty Grim Reaper was left screaming in agony from this sudden burst of power. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Ralph drew a short sword, placing a gem in its groove. In the next moment, the short sword emitted a multicolored divine light. This was a divine artifact bound by a contract with God. At that moment, the radiant brilliance of justice completely dispelled the darkness. 2 weeks passed in the blink of an eye. The surviving humans began to clean up the aftermath. Alucard shared the knowledge collected by the Belmondo clan's treasure and all the research accomplishments in his castle with the surviving humans. Meanwhile, Alucard discovered that Sypha was preparing to leave without saying goodbye. He persuaded Sypha to stay, as he planned to establish a town that would shelter humans. The town would be named after Ralph's surname, Belmondo. Just then, a mysterious figure approached the castle, and to everyone's astonishment, the face beneath the cloak turned out to be Ralph. It turned out that in the final moments of the artifact's explosion, the dying Germain used his last bit of strength to cast a spell that transported Ralph to a distant place. Despite being severely injured and on the brink of death, Ralph, driven by astonishing determination, managed to support his broken body and found his way back to his companions. On a rainy night, a couple hurriedly sought shelter in an inn. It was none other than the couple, Dracula and his wife. Their souls had miraculously escaped the explosion. Empowered by Dracula's formidable power, they were reborn. Lisa didn't want the past to burden their son, Alucard. Therefore, she decided to temporarily conceal the truth from him. In the end of the story, the Dracula who had once been an enemy to the world, finally found his redemption. This time, he would tightly hold onto his beloved. Until the end of time, may we only wish that in every dawn and dusk of our love, you and I carry the fragrance of our first encounter. In the passing years like flowing water, may we forever remain as if meeting for the first time.